Joining us now is Austin Congressman Greg Casar. Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here and covering this.
Absolutely. First off, tell us your reaction to the New York Times report about Francis Lopez and its claims that ICE is targeting him for speaking out about his daughter's deportation.
Well, those aren't just claims. They happened. I just left visiting Mr. and Mrs. Lopez and their two younger daughters here in Austin, and it should send a chill down the spine of everyone watching at home that the federal government would send federal law enforcement, in this case armed ICE agents, after a family just because their daughter spoke out about the mistreatment and completely wrongful deportation that she's experienced. I mean, Mr. Lopez is a tailor, a volunteer at his church. They're amazing parts of this community. And the fact that they were targeted by men in an unmarked van, that he was chased through his backyard, it's just completely unacceptable. And that's why we're demanding that Ani, their daughter that was wrongfully deported, be returned to Austin, and that the Trump administration cease threatening her family.
And Congressman, for those who aren't familiar, this happened yesterday. Can you give us a little bit more details about what else happened yesterday?
Yeah, well, first of all, for folks watching, right, Ani Lopez Bellosa is a 19-year-old, grew up largely here in Austin, against all the odds, got into Babson College, which is one of the top business schools in America. And her only crime was wanting to visit her family as a surprise for Thanksgiving. And then she got shackled and sent to Honduras and spoke up about it. And so then yesterday, an unmarked vehicle with ICE agents came to her parents' house in East Austin. And the only reason that they would show up is to retaliate and threaten her parents because she had the audacity to speak out. And every single person in this country has a First Amendment right to be able to speak up about their government. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you agree with me or not, you should be able to speak out about your government and not have federal law enforcement sent after your parents for it.
Congressman, in a statement to KVUE, DHS cited Annie's removal order from 2015 as grounds for her deportation. What have you learned from DHS about her case recently?
Look, it's really unfortunate to see DHS and Trump's immigration enforcement, where they said they were going to go after the worst of the worst. Those are Trump's words, where they said they're going to go after criminals. And instead, they're going after college students that have grown up here since they were 8 years old. They're going after construction workers on Austin construction sites, custodians, families. I mean, who voted for this? People want to make sure that federal law enforcement keeps us safe. But instead, what they did was shackle a 19-year-old and send her off to a detention center in Texas, had her sleep on the floor, while a judge in Massachusetts said, she's got no due process. Let's have her day in court. And by then, they were already shipping her off to Honduras. Our taxpayer dollars should be used to keep us safe, not to just fulfill Stephen Miller's dreams of deporting as many immigrants as possible. Ani was born in Honduras, but she's an Austinite. She spent almost her entire life here. She has a lot to contribute here, and that's why we want her brought home.
And this incident prompted you to write a letter to DHS and ICE officials, and you're calling on those agencies to return Annie while her case plays out. What sort of answers or responses have you actually gotten, or what do you anticipate getting?
Look, we've seen cases where DHS and the Trump administration have wrongfully deported people. Think of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported, and senators and congresspeople speaking out helped lead that campaign to bring him home. Recently, we had a dreamer who was wrongfully deported from my district, and we were able to bring him back home from Mexico. We want the same so that Annie can have due process in her day in court back here in Austin, Texas. Similarly, we're calling on the Trump administration to not use our federal law enforcement for political purposes, because they're sending federal law enforcement against Annie's parents. And look, it's no coincidence that they sent law enforcement to her parents' house right after she came out in the news. Also, something else that I learned is that Annie was not told that she had this removal order. She was not shown this removal order. She was just shackled and put on a plane. And in this country, you should be allowed to see an attorney, be able to stand in front of a judge, be able to make your case that you've been here virtually your entire life. And unfortunately, the Trump administration is just running roughshod over people's due process.
So, Congressman, what are the broader implications of Annie's deportation and her ongoing case then?
This is not just about Annie and her family. This is not just about immigrants. This is about all Americans' basic right to be able to have due process, have your day in court, and be able to speak up if you disagree with the government without the government saying, where do her parents live? Can we go send somebody to threaten her parents? That is not how things work in this country. In fact, Annie's family fled Honduras because of threats of violence there. And now Annie's little sisters had to watch their dad get chased by armed men coming out of an unmarked van here in East Austin. That's not the country that we want to live in. We want to live in a country where everyone has due process, where people can be safe, and where federal law enforcement is being used to keep us safe, not to fulfill some president's political vendetta.
And that happened while he said he was washing his car yesterday outside his home. All right, Congressman Greg Casar, we appreciate your time.